It's the amazing Rico Brogna podcast with your host, Evan Roberts.
Welcome indeed to a brand new edition of Rico Brogna, episode number 490. We are recording this in the middle of the Mets series against the horrific Colorado Rockies, where the Mets have won the first two games on Friday night in icky but doable fashion, and then a muscling blowout victory on Saturday. Of course, episode 491 will recap the series in depth. We'll name our Rico I'm the Man Now star of the series. We'll find a net negative. But in this edition of the Rico Brogna, we're going to listen to David Stearns. David Stearns meets the media usually like once a homestand. In this case, he met the media before the series began against the Colorado Rockies. We have not had one of these episodes in a while where we listen to the questions and the answers of David Stearns and then react to it. So if you didn't get to hear David Stearns, this episode's pretty good for you because you'll hear everything he had to say. And if you did hear David Stearns, it's still good for you because we will give you our analysis on everything he was asked about. He was asked a lot about Juan Soto and his recent slumps. It does feel in the midst of this Colorado series, granted, the Rockies may be the worst team ever assembled, and they've got some guys who are not major league pitchers, but nevertheless, Juan Soto has had a good series against the Colorado Rockies. He was also asked about Ronny Mauricio, which is certainly a guy we're all paying attention to because he is tearing it up at AAA, and we mentioned this on the last Rico. Should the Mets give him a call sooner rather than later? So let's hear what David Stearns had to say. We'll kick it off with his first question.
David, do you have a personal belief on the runners in scoring position issue generally, that it's statistical randomness, or if there's something about an approach when you have a team that's struggling with that for a period, is there anything that can be done, or is it just one of those things that resolves itself?
Yeah, we talked a little about this the last time I was here as well. And so I'll see if I can be as consistent as possible with how I respond to this. But I think there is a skill in slowing down the moment, and I think there is a skill in handling pressure, and putting yourself in the best frame of mind to succeed in those moments when the intensity is a little higher. Once you do all of that, I think the result is still somewhat random. And there are still smaller sample sizes by nature with runners in scoring position. With that said, we clearly have not been good in that spot over the course of the year and more recently over the last 10 days, 2 weeks. And so I do think we have to start from the position of, is there something we can control? Is there something we can look at to get better? We're certainly doing that work, that investigation. Our players are extremely aware of this, and sometimes you wonder, is that actually a good thing or a bad thing, to be as aware of this as they all are. So yes, I think performing in high pressure situations is a skill that can be learned and improved over time and with experience. But there are some times that even if you have that skill and are doing everything right, that the results aren't going to follow.
And sometimes there's bad luck. And sometimes it's just a collective team slump in that regard. And I don't know if it becomes mental like he was talking about, but the Mets have a lot of guys on their team who have throughout their career been good hitting with runners in scoring position. And for whatever reason, that's not happening this year. I mean, the captain in that is Juan Soto. It's not like Juan Soto has not had big years hitting with runners in scoring position. All you got to do is look at last year with the New York Yankees. I do think if you look at Saturday's game against Colorado, game 2 of this series, a game in which the Mets went out and scored 8 runs, which, yes, the Rockies stink. Yes, Antonio Sensatella should not be a major league pitcher anymore, but they still scored 8 runs and were happy about it. They actually finished the game 2 for 9 with runners in scoring position. Now, sometimes it can be a little bit misleading, but in the case of the Mets, it's been a problem all year. I still have confidence that it's going to change because they have a lot of guys in this lineup who have underperformed to what they should be doing with runners in scoring position. But I think it's a combination of a few things like he talked about. Some of it is bad luck, but a lot of it has been they just haven't performed. And there may not be a rhyme or reason for it. Anyhow, here's more from David Stearns.
Understanding that it's Mendy's job to talk to players on a regular basis. As a front office, is there anything you can do or have done to support Soto during, what hasn't been probably an ideal start to his tenure?
Yeah, I think as an organization, this includes the front office and all of us, we try to stay in regular communication with him. We try to support him as much as possible. He's still helping us win games, and I'm aware that the OPS isn't where he would want it. It's not where we would want it. It's not where our fans would want it. I get that. What I can say is it's not for lack of work behind the scenes. He's working. He's trying. He certainly wants results at a higher level than what we've seen so far. I'm pretty confident we're going to get those. But I also understand it is natural when a player signs a big contract, and this was a really big contract. If the results aren't immediate, there are going to be questions, and there are going to be reactions, and I completely get that. And I think Juan does too.
This is the second time the Mets, whether it was Mendoza earlier this week or Stearns here, has on their own brought up the contract. Like, the question from Anthony DeComo wasn't about the contract. It was just about, hey, he's slumping. Do you try to support him? Are you calling him? Are you speaking to him? And the Mets have mentioned this numerous times, almost like, hey, we think he's pressing. We think the contract is getting to him. And maybe that is the case. I mean, who the hell knows? Like, we talked about when Soto was first traded to San Diego, he also slumped for an extended period of time. Was he pressing because he was in a brand new city? Was he pressing because he was thinking about the contract he had turned down at the beginning of the season? But I do find it interesting that twice, Carlos Mendoza earlier in the week and now David Stearns brought up on their own, hey, it's a massive contract. Maybe you're trying to prove yourself.
From your seat, what has been the primary issue?
I honestly don't have a like, this is the issue he needs to fix to get better. I think he's taking pretty good bats. He's controlling the strike zone pretty well. He's hitting the ball on the ground a little bit more than he has in the past. I think that's something he's aware of. And, but telling yourself, hey, I need to hit the ball in the air more, doesn't immediately translate to hitting the ball in the air more. Do I think he's trying to do a little bit too much right now? Yeah, I think he's probably trying to do a little bit too much right now. And that is natural for a player who cares about improving.
I mean, it's basically alluding to the same thing. He's trying to do too much. He is hitting the ball on the ground an awful lot. And you see that in the amount of double plays he's hit into. Even in this series against Colorado, where it feels like he's breaking out of it, right? Now, you're going to have to make that a consistent thing, especially when you go to LA and you take on the Dodgers. Like, having a good series against the Rockies is nice, but I don't think it's going to convince everyone, okay, he's out of it. But even in these two games against the Rockies, do you guys remember what Soto did in his last at-bats against Colorado? I'll take you back to Friday night after Lindor hit the home run that gave the Mets the 4-2 lead. Brett Beatty stroked the first pitch single, and then Juan Soto grounded into a 4-6-3 double play, his 11th of the season. He grounded into 10 last year. And then in Saturday's game 2 of the series against the Rockies, 6th inning, runner on first, 1 out, bounces into a 4-6-3 double play. So even in a series in which he's actually performed, he continues to hit the ball on the ground so much and hits the ball hard on the ground so much. And because there's traffic in front of him, because the Mets have actually done a pretty good job of getting guys on base, he continues to ground into an inordinate amount of double plays. Now, why is he hitting the ball on the ground? I don't know. David Stearns didn't have an answer for that either. But it's obviously undeniable, and that's what's leading to the fact that he's now grounded into more double plays this season than he did all of last year as a New York Yankee.
Understanding that Soto is known for that elite plate discipline for you, he's taken so many first pitch strikes. What is the line between patience and uncertainty?
Yeah, so I mean, part of elite plate discipline is swinging at pitches you can do damage on, and that's something we look at with every one of our players, Juan included. Are there at bats where he's let some pitches go where he probably could do some damage? Yeah, I think there probably are. I think as he gets more comfortable in the plate, he'll be able to pull the trigger on those. Do
you feel it's a confidence issue at this point?
I don't. I think there's frustration, sure, but I have not sensed a confidence issue.
Yeah, I don't think that's a confidence issue. I mean, Juan Soto has always been, as you heard in the question, and it's true, such a patient hitter. But SNY had a graphic, I think they put this up during Friday night's game, that he is taking first pitch strikes at a higher percentage than he did last year or really any year of his career. I don't know if that's a confidence issue more than it is he's not seeing the ball well issue. We saw that in the sequence in Boston when he was accused of James Hardening it. Accused of not trying. Remember when he struck out looking on 6 straight pitches and it looked odd? It looked like he wasn't picking up the ball well from Garrett Crochet. I don't know if that's an issue all year long, but he's always been a very, very patient hitter. And that's kind of backfired a little bit. And maybe, I'll throw this theory at you, maybe pitchers realize that about Juan Soto. And they say, hey, we got to get ahead of the count. He is as patient as any hitter in baseball. Let's try to steal a strike one. Now, he could ambush us and rip a double, but let's see if we can steal a strike one. So it's possible with him being in the league as long as he's been that teams and pitchers are trying to take advantage of that.
Hey, David. Last year, Soto grounded into 10 double plays the whole season. This year, he already has 10. Just, is that alarming to you, or is it a sign that something maybe isn't right?
Look, I think it speaks to, one, he has had a lot of players on base ahead of him, and he's hit a lot of ground balls. And if you have a lot of players on base ahead of you and you're hitting ground balls, it's been well documented. There's probably been some batted ball misfortune in there somewhere. So we've had players on base. We've hit ground balls. He's trying to hit those ground balls pretty hard. And if you add that misfortune of hitting them right at other people, it's gonna lead to double plays. So we're a third of the way through the season. He does 10 double plays. I would hammer the under on 30 double plays over the course of the season.
Well, hold on a second. We got a team president talking about hammering unders? I mean, I don't know if I've ever heard that one before. Just to keep you posted, David Stearns made those comments on Friday. It was before the series opened up against Colorado. As I just cited to you, he's tacked on 2 more double plays. So that number is at 12. But remember, David told you to hammer the under on 30. Now, I think he's right. I don't think he's necessarily going to keep this pace up. And that's his point. We're a third of the way through the season. He's grounded into 10. Is he going to get to 30? But if he gets to 25, that still sucks too. You know what I mean? I don't buy the traffic argument. I mean, I could go back, and I'm not going to, but I could go back and look at how many times he came up with guys on base last year with the New York Yankees, and I'm going to guess the number is going to be very similar. Like, I don't think he's necessarily getting up with a significant more amount of guys on base. I think it goes back to what we just said. He's hitting the ball on the ground more. That's just a fact. The numbers are telling you that. Why is that the case? That's above my pay grade. Maybe Eric Chavez knows. I don't. But he's hitting the ball on the ground more, and that has obviously led to a crazy amount of double plays. Luckily, the 2 double plays he hit into in the first 2 games of the Colorado series didn't kill him. You know, really didn't. I mean, the second one in game 2 of the series, the Mets had already opened up a 7-1 lead at that point when he grounded into the double play. And the one before that was the 8th inning, and they had just added an insurance run. But double plays can be absolute backbreakers, and he's now grounded into 12 of them.
And then you mentioned like he's trying to do too much. Just how hard is it to break out of that cycle, even if he understands that he's doing it?
I don't know. I mean, I've clearly never sat in that seat. None of us has, and it's a very unique position that he's in. What I do know is that there have been players who have come through here, who have gone to other organizations, who have made big changes in their careers, who haven't had the immediate results that they have sought at the front end of those contracts, and have turned on to be really, really good players for their teams, including past history here. So I'm very confident that it will. Maybe it'll take a bloop or a couple bloops, or maybe it takes some connecting on 1 or 2 to exhale a little bit. But I would imagine it is difficult when the results don't come.
I mean, he is right, and we've talked about this on the Fan. We've certainly done it here on the Rico, the examples of guys that have come here and struggled at first. What's weird is you look for a moment and say, oh, that's going to relax him and that's going to break it open for him. Like you go back a month ago to the Arizona game when he hit the 2 home runs in Arizona, and we all figured that. Right? That was a part of why he was the very controversial Rico, I'm the man now star of that series, because he hit 2 home runs in the finale, and it hasn't broken him out of it. Is this series against Colorado going to do that? I don't know. I mean, you almost need to see it happen consistently before you say, okay, he's back. Now, I'm not concerned long-term. I think the best part of the Soto slump has been the fact the Mets are winning anyway. As we record this Saturday night, Sunday morning, the Mets are tied for first place. And they're doing that while Juan Soto has had this down season. So that is certainly a huge positive.
How sort of surprising is it to see that this stretch with his OPS so low and grounding into double plays has lasted this long into the season? I mean, you might get that like the first month of the season, but now it's been a third of the season. Is any part of this surprising to you?
Well, I think he had a pretty good first month. I do think he had a pretty good first month or so with us. The surface line was still pretty good, and there was still some batted ball misfortune there. So I think the early performance was pretty good. But this hasn't been a month where he's performed up to the Juan Soto standard that everyone's become accustomed to, and that's a very, very high standard. But players go through ups and downs. Even the best of players go through ups and downs, and it's our job to continue to help him get through that.
I mean, I don't think he really had that good of an April, David. I mean, he had stretches where he was playing well, but his overall numbers, March, April, 241 average, 752 OPS, 3 home runs, 12 RBIs. It has not been a great season.
I'm switching gears a bit. Ronny Mauricio is off to a really good start in AAA, but given that he hasn't played baseball in so long, what do you guys need to see from him in AAA to know that he's back to what he was?
Yeah, he's doing a great job, and number one is health and getting him back and building up the volume, and we're continuing to do that. But anytime you see players consistently hitting lasers all over the field, which is what he's doing right now in AAA, you pay attention, and so we're paying attention, and we'll continue to monitor that and see where it goes.
He is hitting the cover off the ball. He's getting hits every single game. It's only been a sample size of 8 games in Syracuse. So from that standpoint, sure, you want to see more, but I'm looking at his numbers down there. He's had a hit in every game he's played, and he's hitting .571. So yeah, it's all been good from Ronny Mauricio in AAA.
Is there any sense of like you want to see him struggle a little bit given how hot of a start he's gotten off to and see how he responds from that?
I don't know. I tend not to root for players to struggle. But I think, we're most focused on him getting the reps under him, getting the volume, hopefully continue to swing a really hot bat. And then once we get to that point, he gives us something to think about.
I guess the follow-up is, when does he give you something to think about? Are we not there yet, or is the sample size still too small? He has played 17 games. I'm going to include rehab assignments because, honestly, what the hell's the difference? He's in the minor leagues. So whether it's in St. Lucie or it's in Binghamton or it's AAA, he's been in the minor leagues, right? He's playing minor league baseball. He's played 17 games down in the minor leagues. He actually didn't hit a lot in St. Lucie and Binghamton when technically he was on a rehab assignment. All the offense is coming lately, and it's coming at AAA. But in Binghamton, he's played 8 games. He's hitting .530. Before that, he played 5 games in Binghamton, 5 games in St. Lucie. So you're looking at 18 games in total that he's played at the minor league level. And really the last 8 is where he's been impressive. This is a guy who's played in the major leagues before. So it's not someone who's coming up and making his major league debut. Now, granted, he didn't have a lot of experience at the major league level back in 2023, but he did play 26 games, and he was sort of impressive at times. So what do you need to see? That's the question. And let's listen more. Maybe David Stearns will give us the answer on what does it take before you call him up.
Sorry, David, one more about Juan, but if you accept that at least an ingredient in his slow start is the adjustment process because of the contract, is there value? I know he's missed one game, but is there value in kind of looking for a spot to say, let's take today off, and maybe it is met with an off day before or after, but or can that be counterproductive too? If there are things going on in his head that may be inhibiting him from becoming the player that we know he is.
Yeah, we've had all those conversations, and we don't know. What we do know is we have a player who's really competitive who wants to play. And so taking him and giving him that extra off day, it's not a player who's had a lot of off days historically. We did give him, I guess, the third game of the Pittsburgh series off heading into the off day. So they had back-to-back off days there. I think that's kind of the right time to do this, especially if it matches up against a left-handed pitcher, which I think it did on that third game of the Pittsburgh series. But Juan wants to play, and yeah, he wants to be out there. He wants to compete. He's not shying away from this. And so I think sending him out there more often than not is probably the right thing to do.
Completely agree. I want him out there every single day. They gave him that off day against the Pirates. It actually turned out to be pretty smart because it was a rainy, disgusting night at Citi Field. And he was right. There was a lefty on the mound, Bailey Falter. It was an ugly night. The Mets ended up losing. And Mendoza denied it had anything to do with the upcoming Yankee series, that it was just merely, let's give him a day. Let's give him the double off day before an off day. But I have no interest as a fan in him getting any more off days. Unless he's hurt, unless there's something wrong with him. I don't think that's necessarily the answer. So I'm glad to hear David Stearns say, no, not really. He wants to play every day. Let's throw him out there.
Just sticking with Soto, sorry. You mentioned conversations that you've had. Have you had to have any conversations with him, maybe with the intention of trying to ease some pressure that he might feel or anything like that? And
I think the only thing I can do is continue to support him, and the only thing we can do is continue to support him. I don't know how much pressure that eases, right? Like it's he's going to put the pressure on himself. He's not feeling the pressure because of the things around him. I don't think. I think he's a highly competitive person who expects a lot of himself, who wants to win, and so when he's not performing up to a level he's accustomed to, he's going to put pressure on himself to do that.
Yeah, I don't think he needs a phone call from David Stearns. I don't think David needs to come down to the locker room and say, Juan, don't worry. The checks will still cash, okay? Everything's going to be okay.
And I asked this to Mendy before too, just what has stood out to you about him, maybe his relationship with his teammates or his work ethic since he's been here? Just anything that stood out to you about him?
I think he's working pretty hard. I think he cares about winning. I think obviously he knows he's not hitting at the level he wants, and I think he's looking for other ways to impact the game. We've seen him take the extra base. We've seen him look for opportunities to steal. I think especially over the last week to 10 days, we've seen him cut some balls off in the gap before they get to the wall, and in pretty impressive fashion. So he's working, he's trying. That was certainly his reputation coming in, is that he's a worker, and we've seen that.
Yeah, this may be mocked because he's not here for his defense or here for his speed, but I do agree with that. I mean, first of all, we mentioned how he's grounded into more double plays than he did all of last year. He's also stealing more bases. We've seen that. And I think his base running has been very solid. I think his defense has been very solid for the most part. So I know we need more than that, but I do agree with that assessment from David Stearns.
Brandon Nimmo's been really valuable in his career, getting on base, the top of the order, then the middle of the order, can hit home runs, but it seems like he's kind of stuck in between of what kind of player he is. What is how's he most valuable to you?
I think either, frankly. I think he's proven that he can do either, and either the on-base machine or the power hitter is really valuable, regardless of where they are in the lineup. I think we sometimes maybe ascribe a little bit too much to the massive OBP guy at the top, and maybe a little bit too much to the power guy in the middle. If you have a leadoff hitter like we did with Lindor, who's hitting for a ton of power, that's pretty valuable too. And if you have a guy in the middle of your lineup who's getting on base 42% of the time, that's really valuable too. So I think what we're encouraging Brandon to do is just be the player he wants to be, and not necessarily, worry about where in the lineup he is or what the expectations are. He's proven he can do both.
I don't think there's so a couple of years ago with Jeff McNeil had this very odd season in which in the first half he hit for a very high batting average, didn't hit for a lot of power, and had a good OPS. And then in the second half of that same season, his average went down significantly, his power went up, and his OPS was exactly the same. And I remember thinking, boy, this is fascinating. I mean, the OPS is giving you the same player, but what do you prefer? Do you prefer the player that hits for a higher batting average, less power, or the guy with more power, less of a batting average? And that was Jeff McNeil, I'd say 4 or 5 years ago. I don't think that's the case with Brandon Nimmo. I don't think that Brandon Nimmo's on base has struggled because his power is going up. I mean, go back to 2022 and 2023. 2 good, consistent years from Nimmo, and also really the first times in his career in which he played every day. We forget about this now, but Brandon Nimmo early in his career couldn't stay healthy. That was one of the biggest questions around him. And in 2022, obviously a great year for the Mets in terms of regular season wins. They won over 100 games. Brandon Nimmo played 151 games most of his career. He only had one other year in his Met career where he played more than 100 games. That was back in 2018. So in 2022, he hit 16 home runs. He hit 274 and had an 800 OPS. The following year, the power went up. The average was exactly the same. The OPS was up a tick, but the power was up. The average stayed the same. The on base stayed the same. Last year, in the second half of the year, his on base percentage and his batting average plummeted. We heard, well, he wasn't healthy. That's what it was. This year, we're kind of getting the same thing that we got last year from Brandon Nimmo. He's hitting for a very low batting average. The power is there, which is fantastic, but the power is not that much more there than it was the last 3 years when he was healthy. He had 24 home runs in 2023. He had a home run in Saturday's game against Colorado. It was his 9th of the season. He's pretty much on that same mid-20s pace. So the powers remain the same over the last 4 years for the most part. It's just that his on base has gone way down. His batting average has gone way down. So I disagree that it's like Nimmo's making a decision. Am I an RBI guy? Am I an on base guy? He just hasn't performed at a good level since the second half of last year. And it is fair to be relatively concerned about that. It is, because you're looking at a sample size going back to the second half of last year and the first half of this year where he's not awful this year. I mean, I know the average isn't good enough, but like I mentioned, he's got 9 home runs. He's got 29 RBIs. He has that 26 home run, 85 RBI pace. It's just the average you'd like to have higher. The on base you'd like to have higher. And then also the other thing, I know you made a big deal about this off 2 years ago. He's not stealing any bases. Last year, he stole 15 bases. This year, he has stolen 1. So that aggressiveness is gone. And I think that leads to the belief of, is he fully healthy? So I think with Nimmo, it's just as simple as he just needs to perform better. I don't think it's about him deciding, am I the RBI guy or am I the on-base guy? He is in the 2-hole now, and we'll see if that benefits him. It did in the second game of the Colorado series when he had 2 hits and hit the home run.
You know what? I disagree. I do think that a lot of it's based off his injury issues right now. That there's something chronic going on. That's the reason why he doesn't do a full spring training. This is why he basically revs himself up differently than other players. And I do think that a lot of what his at bat, his approaches are because he just can't run anymore. I'm not saying he can't, but it's better off he doesn't, which is why he's going for power rather than let me get on base and let me go station to station. It's much easier to jog than to actually hustle.
Well, right now he doesn't get those runs to first base as often because he walks less. His walk percentage this year is 7.9%. That's below the league average. Imagine saying that about Brandon Nimmo, who's got a career walk percentage of 12.5%. This year, he's walking below the league average. So I don't know. Anyhow, here's more from David Stearns.
Mike.
David, you mentioned a couple of times of what you look at with runners in scoring position, the type of at-bats, controlling the strike zone, getting ahead, hitting the ball hard, and then there's sort of a randomness to it. It seems that Juan has made a career of that to this point. But his numbers with runners in scoring position are particularly strikingly bad. Are you still seeing that out of him, the good at-bats in those situations, or is there a little something more?
I think he's probably putting a little extra pressure on himself in those situations. I think that's natural. You know, as a team in those situations, we probably don't have quite the same approach that we've had in other situations. I'm not sure it's to the extent that explains the full gap of our production with runners in scoring position versus without runners in scoring position. But there have probably been some circumstances where there have been some very hittable pitches early in counts that we've taken, and then later in counts, there have been some circumstances where we're probably chasing a little bit more than we are when we don't have runners in scoring position. And this is pretty natural when you're trying to do too much, when you're having trouble getting runners in. The tendency is, okay, let me get into the at bat a little bit more. Let's see a few more pitches. That can lead to some early takes that maybe you wish you had back. And then that happens. All of a sudden you're behind in the count. You really want to make contact and get the guy in or get the guy over, and you expand. And again, I think our players are very aware of this. As I mentioned earlier, maybe even too aware of this. But we have really good hitters. And over the course of the season, I am very confident that our leverage numbers, however you want to define them, are going to normalize and look a lot like what we believe they should look like.
I do agree with that. And I also wonder that the more this is talked about, not from us, not from fans or on the Rico or even media members, but the more Jeremy Barnes and Eric Chavez and basically every player talks about their issues with runners in scoring position, how much more it becomes mental, as David Stearns alluded to.
What have you thought of Alvarez this season to this point?
I think we have a player who made a very significant swing change in the offseason, who lost all of spring training or almost all of spring training, got off to a late start, and has probably been fighting himself a little bit to this point. I think he hasn't produced at the level he's accustomed to producing. He's working really hard to continue to refine his swing, to get it to a place that he feels really comfortable with. And I think we all would expect that we're going to see better production going forward than what we've seen in his relatively brief stint since he's come off the IL.
He has played 24 games since coming off the injured list. He has now gotten 92 plate appearances. So it is a small sample size. He's got to be better. He's got to be better. And I'm not at the point of saying he should be sent down to the minor leagues. He does have options left. I'm not ready to call back Hayden Senger and, send Alvarez to the minors. But I do think, as we've talked about on the Rico, he's going to lose playing time. Now, he started the first two games of the Colorado series. You start to look ahead. You start to look at 4 games in LA and 3 more games in Denver against the Rockies. And I wonder what that catching split's going to look like. Because at some point he has to perform. He's had a very tough start to this series against the Rockies. He's 1 for 7. And the one hit he got, for those that were paying attention, in the 8th inning of a blowout, he almost got thrown out at first base on a base hit to right field. And as I saw Mickey Moniak, the Rockies right fielder, getting ready to make that throw to first base, I'm thinking, oh my God, Francisco, of all people on this team, besides Soto, you can't have Francisco Alvarez thrown out at first base by the right fielder. But I hope his production is going to be better. I will say one positive thing about Alvarez offensively. It's not even a positive thing. It's just a general thing. He's 23 years old. We are still talking about an incredibly young player. That doesn't mean that he should just remain the starting catcher in perpetuity. I think that playing time needs to be diminished, and it's going to have to start being diminished real soon. Doesn't mean he gets buried, because as a catcher, you're always going to get those opportunities, but the production's not good. And he's done very little. He has 1 home run. He's got 3 extra base hits in total since he's come back. So right now he's just the inferior player to Luis Stearns.
David, this is we're kind of broadly about slumping players, not just Juan, but obviously he did not have a bad month last year. Francisco had a great calendar year. I think he's 8 for his last 55. If a player hasn't slumped in a long time, can that make it harder to get out of the slump if he finally slumps?
That's one I have not posited. But that could, sure. Like, yeah, I mean, if you haven't experienced a slump in a while, does it feel deeper and tougher to get out of than if you regularly experience slumps? Like I could buy that a little bit. I don't know if that's what's going on here or not. But yeah, well, look, Juan's a very good hitter who has produced at a historically high level throughout his career. That's obviously why he signed the contract he did, and why we're also excited to have him here. And so this is an unusual stretch for him, and I am sure he feels it as though, and that can lead to natural discomfort and pressure.
But Soto has slumped before. He may not have slumped last year, though he did. He had a stretch of games with the Yankees. I think it was in August of last year where he slumped. And we've talked about it a lot, his time initially in San Diego. So while he's had a wonderful career, he has seen slumps before. I don't think this is completely new. The completely new part is he just signed a record contract, and he left one New York team to play for another New York team. By the way, I want to ease all concerns about Soto's happiness. When he hit his home run in game 2 of the series against Colorado, the jack to left center field, I took my camera phone out to watch him celebrate, and he seemed very happy. Gave Pete Alonso a big high five, was pointing to the sky, was high-fiving teammates. So for those Met fans still concerned about Juan Soto not celebrating and being miserable, he seemed very happy after his home run in the 4th inning.
Just back to Mauricio for a quick sec. I think he has yet to play more than back-to-back nights. What are the actual tangible markers he needs to hit before you would consider activating him?
Yeah, there aren't specific, you need to check this box, you need to check that box. He has now, as you noted, he has now played back-to-back 9 innings. That's important, obviously. I think it's more subjective. Is he comfortable playing the field regularly? Does it look right? Offensively, sure seems like he got himself right pretty quickly, which is very impressive. He certainly has development left in his offensive game, and he's an enormously gifted player. He's likely never going to be the type of guy with Juan Soto type plate discipline, but there are probably some strides he can make there. And so while he's in AAA, we'll encourage him to continue to make those strides while recognizing his gift is that he hits the ball incredibly hard. And we don't want to encourage any approach change that takes away from what his true gift is.
David did not answer the question. That is a frustrating one. What do you need to see to call him up? He's played back-to-back games. He's played full 9-inning games. Right now, you're employing Jared Young to DH every once in a while against a right-handed starter. So right then and there, you could take the Jared Young games and make them Ronny Mauricio games. You could also throw him in the mix at second base. I asked this question to the Rico audience. Hey, if you want to call up Ronny Mauricio, where do you play him? And there are options. One option is second base with maybe more McNeil in center, or maybe less McNeil overall and Tyrone Taylor in center. One option would be just DH him. Just say, okay, you're the designated hitter. I've seen enough of Jared Young. Starling Marte, yeah, once in a while, which basically is his job now anyway. But even if you don't want to do that, my question is, and David didn't answer it, is what are you looking for? This is a kid who was called up late in 2023, and he had flashes in 2023. I don't want to act like he came up and, hit to a 900 OPS. He didn't, but in the 20 some odd games he played, there was a lot of good, right? So the Mets clearly believe that at the end of 2023, when they were evaluating players in a lost season, he was close, and he was probably going to be on the team to start 2024. That would have been my guess. He gets hurt. Sucks. Misses the entire season. Now he's rehabbing, feels like he's healthy, and he's hitting. So it's natural to say, okay, now what? Kind of reminds me of the Jason Dominguez situation last year with the New York Yankees. And Brian Cashman's answer was, there's no room for him. That's not what David Stearns quite said yet, because there probably is room for him in terms of Jared Young is DHing every other day, and I know he hasn't been terrible. I don't mean to bash Jared Young. He into some bad luck in game 2 of this series, lined out with a runner on third, less than 2 outs, did have a base hit in the 5th inning, but Jared Young is DHing, so that could clearly be a Ronny Mauricio spot.
Ev, and I don't mean to downplay anything like the season. The season's very important. We want to win as many games as possible. People want to win the division. But like you said, Jared Young is DHing right now. Why not, with the team playing as well as they are playing, the fact that they're especially playing the Rockies, why don't you bring him up right now? Why don't you just call him up, give him playing time, give him real at-bats during the regular season so you see what you have? Listen, right now Mark Vientos is slumping. Brett Beatty's playing a lot more. And let's be serious, Brett Beatty's not hitting every day, but he's going on these stretches where he's on fire 3 or 4 days in a row. Vientos is kind of falling out. Why not put Mauricio up for bat? See what he can do. It doesn't make any sense while the team is so successful why they can't give him real life at bats in the major leagues while they have such a comfortable lead in at least a playoff spot.
Yeah, no, I'd love to know what they're looking for. David Stearns, unfortunately, did not give us that answer on what markers he needs to hit before he's called up. But right now, just keep hitting. That's what's got to happen down at AAA. He's mostly playing second base. He's playing a little bit of third base. The one thing that I don't want to say bothers me, but I disagree with Mendy about, and it goes back to this Jared Young, Ronny Mauricio can come up in DH argument. I want Vientos playing every day. So Mark Vientos plays on Friday, and he has a bad game. Clearly, struck out 3 times, struck out looking, I think, every single time. On Saturday, DH him. Jared Young shouldn't be the DH. Mark Vientos should be the DH. Throw him out there. You're facing a guy in Antonio Sensatella who's not a major league pitcher. He's pitching to like a 7 ERA. Let Vientos remain in the lineup every day. I want Beatty in the lineup every day too, and clearly there's room for the both of them. Beatty plays third, Vientos DHs. Starling Marte is a part-time player. Jesse Winker's on the injured list. It kind of seems simple, but right now that's not what's happening.
I guess then how much of him being down there is still a product of the physical stuff versus the development stuff, where if he were 100% healthy, he may or may not be up.
So I think it's fair if he were 100% healthy and has had 200 plate appearances already this year, it's a much easier decision. So I think it's both, but I don't have in my mind he's got to get to this plate appearance threshold before he's an option. And then once we do feel like he's at that spot, it's about, all right, if we're going to bring him here, he's got to play. And how does that work? I mean, we've got some other guys who are swinging the bat pretty well and helping us. We also have some guys who are out of options. And so figuring out exactly what that puzzle looks like is a real part of it.
So he does bring up, where does he play? We've answered that one. But he also says if he had 200 plate appearances, it would be easier. So there's no set amount, but clearly what we're getting here from David is he needs to play more before we make that decision. He talks about guys not having options. I'm thinking about who's on the roster and who you would potentially send down. Number one, Jared Young would be the likely guy to be sent down. And the other person who I wouldn't want to send down, but you can, is Luis Angel Acuna. He has not hit much recently. I wouldn't send him down because I think Acuna is clearly blossomed into this role as a pinch runner extraordinaire off the bench and a really solid late inning defensive replacement. And those are important things. And I remember during spring training, we talked, hey, would they be comfortable with Luis Angel Acuna not playing consistently? Would they be okay with him in that role? Well, They never answered that question, but I think the actions of right now tell you that they're good with him not playing every single day. They're good with him being that valuable piece off the bench, and he is valuable. Even though he's hit very little over the last month, that's okay because of what he provides defensively and what he provides speed-wise.
As far as Siri goes, how far along do you see him in terms of, when he's going to be able to come back? And, given the fact that Taylor's been pretty successful, how do you envision roles changing in the outfield?
So in terms of where he is, he's still in his running progression volume buildup. So very difficult for me at this point to really even estimate when he's going to be back. We need to make sure that the running form and the volume are in a place where he's not going to re-injure himself by going out to the outfield and playing baseball. And we're just not at that point yet. And I'm not certain we're all that close to that. So we got a little bit of time. Once he gets on a rehab assignment, gets some volume back under his belt, we can begin to have the discussion about what that looks like from a role perspective and how it fits on the team. But we're not at that point yet, so we're not even having those discussions yet.
Yeah, that's a long way off with Jose Siri because who knows what this roster looks like by the time Siri comes back. It's great that he's making progress. You almost forget that he exists. But I think once he starts playing rehab games, then I think it's a worthy discussion of, okay, what do you do? Like, where does he fit on this team? Because a lot of things are going to change, I'm going to guess, between now and then.
Regarding the starting rotation, two guys who are part of the blueprint are coming back from injuries. Where do you see, Minaya and Montas?
So I think both progressing well. Obviously, Frankie out on his rehab assignment. We still have a little ways to go to get him volume up and built up, but that middle segment of June, I think, is still realistic. I think Sean's behind that in terms of how that fits into our team and our rotation. We'll tackle that when we get there.
Yeah, kind of the same thing. I mean, so much can change. Like, I give you a small one that I hope is not the case, but Griffin Canning has sort of come back to earth over his last couple of starts. What if that trend continues? What if Griffin Canning, the clock strikes midnight? We may be talking about him being shipped to the bullpen. So whenever we're talking about guys coming back, and certainly Frankie Montas feels real because he's making rehab starts, so he could come back in the next couple of weeks. So much can change. Clearly what they've shown you with the six-man rotation, though, is that they really only want to insert the sixth man when they're playing a long stretch of games like they have coming up right now that they're in the midst of, because they just played these games against Colorado. They're going to Los Angeles. They're playing Colorado again. They're playing all these consecutive games back to back to back to back. And that's why we're going to get a sixth man in LA. Carlos Mendoza did announce Paul Blackburn is going to start the opener of the Dodger series.
Carlos was explaining that, Blackburn will probably go into the rotation to make it a six-man rotation.
There you go.
One of the games in Los Angeles. Do you think that a six-man rotation is a thing that you might like to stick with the rest of the way?
I don't think we're going to commit to exclusively a six-man rotation for the rest of the way. I think we'll do it when it makes sense within the constructs of our schedule. We'll do it when we have these stretches of 15, 16, 18 games in a row that pop up throughout the course of a season. But I would imagine, as we have done so far this year, we're going to continue to swing back and forth for a little while between 6 and 5, depending on what our schedule looks like, how our guys are feeling. Do they need the extra rest? Do they not need the extra rest? It's an ongoing conversation, and we're probably going to take it turn by turn.
Yeah, I think they're going to go by stretch. So right now, like we said, in the middle of this 13-game run where they're playing consecutively, they're inserting a sixth man. Then when they have an off day, they only have a 6-day run. They play 3 against Washington, 3 against Tampa on the following homestand. Then they have another off day. So I don't think they'll insert the sixth man there. But then after that, they got 3 in Atlanta, 3 in Philly, 4 home against Atlanta, 3 in Pittsburgh. That's a long stretch of games. And I'm pretty sure that kind of group between June 17th and June 29th, you'll see a six-man rotation. For now, it's going to be Paul Blackburn. Once Frankie Montas comes back, barring changes, Blackburn could become the long man, or Griffin Canning, like we talked about earlier. And then when Mania comes back, we'll see. But yeah, I think they're going 6-man based on the stretch of schedule. Now, I just said I hate looking ahead, but let's just say everyone's pitching well. Then maybe they would keep a 6-man rotation if they've got 6 guys who are just so good. Remember, when they've inserted a 6th man throughout this season so far, think about who they've inserted. I mean, they inserted Brandon Waddell. Basically, they used an opener. They inserted Justin Hagenman. Remember him. They brought up Blade Tidwell that one time. So they haven't had like a real 6-man. It's kind of amazing that it's taking until June before it's truly a guy who's going to stick around, maybe in the bullpen, but stick around in Paul Blackburn.
What have you made of maybe some of the uncharacteristic defensive miscues, particularly as it concerns your infield, and how do you rectify that when it is uncharacteristic?
Yeah, I think when it's uncharacteristic, you kind of get back to fundamentals and you work, which our guys are doing. Again, the uncharacteristic miscues that we've made defensively, I think we will clean up. And it's another one of those areas where our players are very aware of this, and I think are working pretty hard to get it right. And it's cost us a couple games, and we understand how important every single out is. When you give teams extra outs, generally comes back to bite you.
No doubt. It depends on who we're talking about when it comes down to uncharacteristic defensive miscues. And, if you're worried about it, I'm not worried about Francisco Lindor. Lindor has not had the greatest stretch at times of defense. He's Francisco Lindor. He's a Gold Glove caliber shortstop. I'm not worried. Mark Vientos going backwards defensively is a worry, which is why he's basically not their third baseman anymore. And Brett Beatty plays the bulk of the time. So to me, it comes down to who we're talking about specifically.
Are there situations where players are maybe a little bit too aware of some of the issues that are kind of facing the team?
It's always the balance of you can't address something unless you're aware of it. You can't improve in an area unless you understand that area needs improvement. But if we continue to harp on it and talk about it, it leads to pressure, which can lead to reactions that maybe are not the most constructive. So it is a balance. I think our coaches and coaching staff and Mendy do a great job of walking that line, and I'm confident we're gonna get sorted out.
All right, whatever. I don't really have a comment on that. Let's hear more from David Stearns.
David, with about 2 months now until the deadline, and roughly a half a dozen teams that don't figure to be contending for anything, do you expect this to be pretty much the normal kind of build up to the deadline where teams are holding on to their assets to play teams off of each other until virtually the last minute? Or is there anything at all that suggests that things might move a little earlier this year?
I haven't seen anything yet or heard anything yet that makes me suggest that it's going to be an unusually early period. But that can certainly change. If one club decides that they want to engage early, it could spur action. But to this point, it certainly seems that it's looking to be a little bit more of a traditional later in the process type deadline.
I was talking about this recently, and it was in regards to the Yankees on Evan and Tiki on the Fan. I'll bring it to the Mets here on the Rico. I got a weird feeling that this trade deadline is going to be awful, that it's going to be really, really bad. And this may be the trade deadline where Major League Baseball reevaluates when the trade deadline is. For a while, I've thought the deadline should move to the middle of August. That July 31st just doesn't fit anymore. We have more wild card teams. There's a great amount of just like mediocrity in Major League Baseball, competitive balance, if you want to call it that, even though we've had some really, really, really bad teams over the last couple of years, like the White Sox and certainly the Rockies this season. But if you think about it, we are still 2 months away, so a lot can happen. You've got your bad teams. You're clear they suck. They're going to sell bad teams like Colorado and Chicago and even Pittsburgh. They don't have a lot to trade. There's a reason why they're that bad. There's a reason why the Rockies are historically bad. There just isn't a lot to offer. And then you look at everyone else, teams are going to think they're in it. And it's a tough sell to your fan base in late July with still 2 months left to go in the season when you're only a couple of games out to sell guys off. So we're 2 months out. We'll see what this looks like a month from now. But I just have a feeling there isn't going to be a lot to be sold at the trade deadline.
Thanks. It's probably been about 2 months since we've heard the phrase torpedo bat. But now that there's been a larger sample size, how would you assess the impact that they've had? And do you continue looking at new types of bat construction and see what might be useful?
So I think like any new equipment that comes out, it's helpful to a certain segment of the player population and maybe not helpful to others. And I think this brought to the forefront a really good conversation about bats in general, and the industry as a whole has gone through different variations of bats before with different handles and different types of knobs. So this is not new. It's just it looks strange, or when it first came out, it looked strange, and the Yankees obviously had 1,000 home runs, and it garnered significant attention, and it was a great story. So I clearly players around baseball, certain players are still using it. I think it's likely benefiting players. I think teams are spending more and more time understanding which players it could benefit and trying to target this a little bit more. And I think those types of explorations will continue.
There has never been a story disappear as quickly as the torpedo bat. It was such a big deal for about 5 days, and David's right on why. It's because the Yankees hit a bunch of home runs. And now you still notice the torpedo bat, but it's just not a thing anymore. It's basically completely gone away. Anyhow, good to hear from the president of the New York Mets, David Stearns, checking in on the team as they began their 3-game series against the Colorado Rockies, which so far so good, as the Mets won the first 2 games against Colorado on Friday night and on Saturday late afternoon. We will have a Rico Brogna recapping the series like we do for every series. We'll name our Rico star of the series. We'll pick our Rico net negative, and we'll also look ahead to what is a very interesting road trip. 4 games against the Los Angeles Dodgers, and then 3 games against the Colorado Rockies. But so far, it's been a fun weekend. I was there on Saturday, and I was celebrating. I was celebrating a Juan Soto home run, a Brandon Nimmo home run, and you know what? I was celebrating all the highlights with Mio Sparkling Sake, a true crowd pleaser. Light, bubbly, and easy to enjoy, whether you're at Citi Field, like I was on Saturday, or your favorite spot. Ask for Mio Sparkling Sake by name, a new tradition served chilled, imported from Japan, official sake of Rico Brogna. Enjoy responsibly. Thank you very much for listening to this Let's Listen and React to David Stearns Meeting the Media. Again, make sure you're out on the lookout for episode 491. That'll be our big Rockies series recap of Rico Brogna. Thank you for listening and subscribing to another edition of Rico Brogna.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of the Rico Brogna podcast. It's amazing, isn't it? Make sure you download it now to keep it on you at all times.